everybody, and welcome back to Equido Horsemanship's podcast, and I hope you're having a great time in this fabulous weather. And today, as a guest, and I'm very honoured to have sitting beside me, is the absolutely amazing Dr. Stephen Peters. Woo!
Hi Morgan, I'm glad to be here in Scotland. The reason that I'm here is we're giving a horse brain science seminar clinic. There will be a number of folks joining us here over the weekend. But for those of you who don't know who I am, I was a human neuroscientist, and my specialty was dementia and assessing brain functioning. You might say, well, what does that have to do with horses? I spent a lot of time studying horse brains. I've always been interested in horses, always had horses. Some of the questions that I really wanted to have answered in regards to how horses' nervous system worked required me to see lots and lots of horses. I solved this problem by hooking up with a fifth generation cowboy, Martin Black, and some of your listeners may know.
Yeah, they'll know them.
Martin.
Yep, absolutely.
Basically, we spent years looking at horses, observing horses, taking pictures of horses, and he was able to provide the empirical evidence. In other words, what he saw by observation, an observation of large numbers of horses, all kinds of horses, and then I could provide the neurology behind why horses were doing what they did. And it really was a cool enterprise, because it was like two people having puzzle pieces and dumping them on the kitchen table and finding out all our pieces fit together. After a while, it was Martin's idea that we write a book, and that led to Evidence-Based Horsemanship.
Oh, right, yes, I've read that. It's fabulous. Fabulous book, guys. If you've not read it, go out there, buy it, and read it. It will change your viewpoint on horses completely. Sorry. Yeah.
And some people in your audience may think, well, why would I want to understand horse brain functioning? All I really want to do is ride my horse, or I want to event, or I want to do whatever I do with my horse. I don't need to know all this science. But if you stop for just a moment and thought about the fact that everything that your horse does, everything it perceives, every action that your horse goes through has to run through its brain. So having a true understanding of how the brain functions can actually give you a much more intimate, deeper understanding of your horse and improve your communication.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Yeah, get you out of trouble when...
Oh, God, I wish if you're right like me, guys, you're in trouble quite often, so it's always a good tool to have. So, and that's where you sort of started to collate all this information, Steve. And what conclusions did you come to from the information that you started to receive? How did that change your viewpoint?
Well, basically, we're very rigid in the horse world. You know, we've always done it for 50 years this way, we've always done it 100 years this way, and this is how we do it. Well, that's a man-made construct. Horses' brains don't function that way. So if we want to set up a situation optimal for learning, optimal for communication, understanding, we really need to understand how that brain works. In fact, now we can do EEGs on horses' brains, we can do MRIs on horses' brains, we can use variable heart rate monitors. There's so much medical technology that instead of somebody's statement or instead of somebody's interpretation of what a horse is saying, we're getting very close to the point where the horse can actually tell us.
And that isn't that amazing if you think about in just a short period of time. I mean, we're talking about maybe the last 10, 15 years, maybe, Steve, when this is the leap forward that this is. It's being made in relation to our understanding of the horse. And do you find, Steve, that the more we understand the horse, do you find it has a reflection on how we then interact and probably train the horse? Have you seen any changes in that? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. We Unfortunately, we think the horse has a human brain,
Yeah, yeah,
and that really gets us in trouble.
yeah,
So they perceive the world differently.
yeah,
They process differently.
yeah,
They have a different brain.
yeah.
So when your horse is giving you a hard time,
Mhm.
you're the one that puts the label on with your
Yeah.
big frontal lobe.
Yeah.
Hard time, bad horse.
Yeah,
Your horse is really just responding
yeah,
to the interaction
yep.
with you. So when people say, my horse needs to learn respect, well, respect is an abstract term.
Yeah, yeah.
Their brain doesn't know what an abstract term is.
Yeah.
If your horse is stepping into your space, if that's what you mean, you're doing something to allow that horse to think that's okay to come into your space.
Kind of created that situation yourself, and
Exactly.
then giving it a label is reinforcing it to you that the horse is just being naughty.
And sometimes we're really not clear in our communication. What I mean by that is your horse may come into your space,
Yeah, yeah,
and you may punish your horse for doing that,
yeah,
and then 5 minutes later your horse may do something you like, and now you're in your horse's face, hugging your horse, kissing your horse,
yeah.
and so that
yeah.
mixed message just leads to confusion.
Yeah.
And the more confused your horse gets, the more sympathetically aroused. What I mean by that is their nervous system gets more aroused. Now, when your horse comes out of its what we call window of tolerance, that's an area where the horse can process information, where the horse can learn things. When the horse is starting to go into fight or flight, it's pointless to try to teach your horse anything.
So when they're angry and trying to get away, or not angry, that's maybe an emotive term.
Frightened is
Frightened.
often.
Yeah, when they're frightened and you're trying to force them or shout at them or punish them and make them do it, they're not capable of understanding. Is that what you're saying, Steve?
You're putting gas on the fire, actually.
Right.
And the best thing to do is just step back and allow them to reset their nervous system.
Yeah.
Because until they reset,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to connect.
And what do you mean by reset? That's an interesting term. Can you explain that to our listeners?
Sure. Every living creature struggles to maintain its biological integrity. That's what we call homeostasis.
Yep.
Right? And that's where they're feeling comfortable and safe.
Yep.
And homeostasis is part of that is being able to adapt to changing situations.
Yep. Yep.
That adaptation oftentimes is just being still enough to drop back down into that window of tolerance.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Now you can come out the top of the window of tolerance.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is punish your horse, get after your horse. Now your horse's head comes up above the withers, their eyes get large, their feet get dancy, they're looking to flee. If you take away flight from your horse when they're that aroused, some horses go to fight.
Yeah, and so how would that manifest itself? What would we see?
For example, you may put your horse into a small pen. So
Yeah,
now you've
yeah.
confined them. They
Yeah.
can't flee.
Mm-hmm.
And now you go in there and they feel cornered.
Yeah.
And you come after them and you're a little nervous, so you've got a whip with you.
Yeah.
Right? So the horse sees that and decides there's no way out of here, and now they rear.
Right.
Now they rear a paw
Yeah.
because we've taken that away from them.
Yeah.
Let's say that they rear and you whip them a couple of times.
Yeah.
So you can get them really panicky, but some horses at that point in time will check out.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting phenomenon. They'll dissociate.
Okay.
They'll go somewhere else to find their safety. It's the same with humans.
Right.
Oftentimes when somebody's, for example, sexually assaulted, they can't run away.
Yeah.
They're not strong enough to fight.
Yeah.
So their instinct is to just freeze. This is an instinct. It's not something they think through. It's their nervous system's adaptation of trying to get back to homeostasis and feel safe.
Could that maybe sometimes be misinterpreted by the human as the horse doing as they were told? So although they appear to be sorry, in inverted commas, for whatever it was they did, and they're doing as they're told, they're not really in a learning mode of mind. Is that what you're saying here?
That's a very good point. That's oftentimes what people call desensitization.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a key area to take a look at, because if we're going to flood our horse with stimuli and want them to ignore all the things around them, they can check out. You know, that's that horse you see running around that round pen, looking outside the round pen,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to go somewhere
Yes.
else in their
Go to
in
their
their
happy
mind.
place.
Exactly. But it's not a happy place. It's a survival instinct.
Yeah, yeah.
Now we've got a horse who's checked out, so they appear very safe to us.
Yeah, yeah.
They may be still, parked, just like we like.
Mhm.
If you get really good at reading their nervous system, after a while you'll see tendons in their jaw that are still tight.
Ah.
They're not licking and chewing. Their head is still up above the withers, and they're solidly, rigidly locked. They're not relaxed.
So there's lots of physical cues that maybe if you're not as in tune with how the mental processes are working, there are physical clues or the cues that you could pick up on to help you understand, well, do you know what, this horse is not ready for taking in information.
Absolutely, and oftentimes you think that you so-called desensitized your horse. Now you're off on a ride, and it's like somebody walking out on a highline wire, and then they wake up. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
they freak out, and that's what everybody says. This came out of nowhere. You know, my horse, for no reason at all. There's almost always a reason,
Yeah.
and it almost never is out of nowhere.
So there's been little breadcrumbs, so to speak, a bit like Hansel and Gretel. There's a trail of breadcrumbs, and if we're not noticing the breadcrumbs, then all of a sudden we're at the gingerbread house, and things are not going to end well for anybody. So that's a really interesting point. Yeah.
Your horse, being a prey animal,
Yeah.
is their survival instinct,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because that behavior's been selected over generations of generations to allow their brain mechanisms to have rapid response to threat.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So lots of things are considered a predatory threat unless proven otherwise.
So the horse's natural assumption is then, if I don't know what it is, it's a good chance it's going to kill and eat me. That's interesting. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
And your horse is actually always asking you, am I safe?
Right.
They do not want to be sympathetically aroused. They do not want to be kicking and biting and bucking and feeling terrible.
Yeah. So they don't do that just to be naughty and just because they're a bad pony or a bad horse. So they get those labels, though. People put those labels on them, don't they? Yeah.
They're victims of their own neurochemistry. They're victims of the neural network that they've created.
Mm-hmm.
Just like your horse, your brain is live wired.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a snowflake. So all of your experiences, everything you paid attention to has created your brain. Some people say the horse is in the now, but the horse can't possibly be in the now. That'd be easy. They'd be a tabula rasa, right? The
What is
horse,
that? Sorry, for those of you, including me, who don't know what that means, what does that
a
mean?
blank slate.
What's that, sorry?
A blank slate.
A blank slate, thank you.
So your horse, thank you.
Sorry.
Or, yeah, and pull me back to
Normal
to
speak.
normal ground here, and I do apologize for that. But it would be easy if a horse had no history to train the horse, because there would be no interference.
Yeah.
But what you did with that horse last week and yesterday is in that horse now. And so
right.
that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with whatever's happened up to that point.
And is it true, or do you think it's true, that they have almost like a photographic memory? Is that maybe a bit of a humanism again, anthropomorphization?
Yeah, that probably is. But here's what basically happens. There's a structure in the brain called the amygdala.
Yeah, yeah.
It's related to fear. And nature has constructed the brain in such a way that the amygdala is attached to the hippocampus.
Yeah.
And the hippocampus is the structure related to memory.
Right, okay.
So What's going to kill you is going to be locked in.
So you've got that imprint or that image or memory or set of things, and it's not just one thing, is that right? It's like a whole plethora of different stimulus that adds up to that one moment.
Actually the design of the brain under enough pressure is well designed to create a traumatic memory.
Okay.
Once that's happened, the nervous system is reset, not in the way we want it to be.
Right.
Now they're hyper alert. Now they're hyper aroused.
Right.
Now they're all kinds of nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a lot of brain activity, and we're trying to get their attention and teach them something, right? But their brain is all over the place. They can't
focus.
They can't attend
listen.
to us.
Yeah.
Right.
You see that quite a lot, don't you? But you must see that a lot, sure.
You do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You do. So that trauma can be haunting because the nervous system now has been changed. Some people are the same way. You know, if people have PTSD, then under the right circumstances, they're not just thinking of that trauma. Their bodies physiologically are reliving.
That is interesting. Yeah.
That trauma. That's what flashbacks are. A memory you cannot forget.
Oh right. Okay, that's actually a really good analogy, because I'm quite sure everybody, if who's listening, at some point in their life may have experienced something like that which can cause that. And sometimes it's a trigger. It could be a smell, a sight, a sound, a bit of music or whatever can cause that instant memory. Is it similar for the horse, do you think?
Similar to the horse, so that, you know, for the zebra, there's rustling in the leaves, and then there's this funny smell, and the sun is shining down. It's noon, right over top, and then all of a sudden a lion comes out through the bushes, jumps on the zebra, but the zebra escapes.
Yeah.
Right. Now, rustling in the leaves has a different meaning.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
At noon, it's a different sense. And if you pile them up together, think of this. Think of the Vietnam veteran.
Yeah.
Who's walking on the beach in Florida long after the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And the wind's blowing through the palm fronds, right? And then all of a sudden a news helicopter comes over.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Their body physiologically is back in Vietnam. You've probably experienced this on a different level. Some people may have been in a bad automobile accident, and they purposely drive a few miles out around the area where they had the accident. And if you hook them up physically, you know, to, let's say, a variable heart rate monitor or a galvanic skin response, and you drove them past that area, it's likely that you'd have a physiological response.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And that actually, I mean, I know we're talking about horses, but that also ties in with riders who've maybe had a fright or an issue or something has happened, and they might not even remember it, or it might have not been significant, or they thought it wasn't significant, but then all of a sudden they find themselves for no reason having a panic attack on a horse, and they can't quite pinpoint what that was. And sometimes it's something as simple as you're sitting on the same colour of horse that you had an issue, and it's not that particular horse, but it's the same colour of horse. Have you found that? Yeah.
Right. In fact, I'd recommend, if people are interested in going down this line of thought, the book by Bessel van der Kolk, Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, right. No,
it's an interesting book in that we may suffer our traumas more physiologically than psychologically than we think.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes, you know, if we go to the movie theater and somebody creepy sits behind us, and we might have been assaulted before, all of a sudden we're hyper alert, we're looking for the exits. And yet we will create in our brain a narrative that explains it, and oftentimes that's inaccurate. So sometimes we'll say things like, I'm not really that interested in this movie. Right? Or, you know what, I have so many things to do, maybe I shouldn't even be watching this movie. And so you leave the movie theater because you have all this physiological arousal.
And your mind doesn't consciously realise that it's not a conscious decision, it's
Right. So you've
that's
got a
interesting.
trauma riding with your horse, and you get back on your horse, and from where I'm from, there's sayings like cowboy up, cowgirl up, you know, get back in the saddle.
Yeah,
And that's probably the worst advice you could give
Yeah.
anyone.
yeah,
Because they get back in the saddle,
yeah.
they try to convince themselves up in their head
Uh-huh.
that they're comfortable, that
Uh-huh.
everything's fine. Maybe they want to put on a facade for all the people
Yeah,
that are their friends,
yeah, yeah.
yet internally their heartbeat goes up,
Uh-huh.
their respiration changes,
Yeah.
and they don't realize it, but on a level, their legs are getting a little tighter,
And the horse
they're
is picking
tugging
all
on
this up.
the
Yeah,
reins,
yeah,
and then that horse feels like something's wrong.
yeah.
So now the horse, their radar is starting to look for something wrong in the environment.
Right.
So now you go by a rock that you've gone by 20 times before,
Yeah,
and your horse bolts.
yeah.
And you think,
Where did
why?
that
We've
come
gone by this boulder.
It did it for
And
no reason.
all these
Uh-huh.
signals
Yeah.
were telling the horse, you're not safe, you're not safe, you're not safe. And you have to remember, really the signal you want to continue to send is, you're safe.
Everything's okay. Everything
You're
is fine.
safe.
Yeah.
And the more you do that, the more curious your horse can become.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
The greater their window of tolerance. You
Yeah.
build their
Yeah.
stress
Yeah.
tolerance
Uh-huh.
by letting them
Uh-huh.
know they're
Uh-huh.
safe.
Yeah.
And sometimes resetting
Hang on. Sitting. Yep. Yeah.
Sometimes resetting the nervous system is no more than just coming to a stop after your horse has been maybe a little stressed and just waiting on them.
So just
Waiting on
waiting. This is important. People don't take the time to pause, and that's why is that so important, Steve? What is the
That
key to
pause button is what that horse needs to assimilate information. You need spaced learning. So it needs to assimilate that information, take stock of where it's at, and what you really want to do, wait for that licking and chewing, for the head to come down and licking and chewing. Why would licking and chewing be an important indicator?
Yeah, I was about to ask that. Yeah.
Your ninth cranial nerve, glossopharyngeal nerve, it only has one purpose.
Uh-huh.
It's all made of what we call parasympathetic fibers.
Yeah.
That's rest and digest. Sympathetic is fight or flight, parasympathetic is rest and digest. It's an indicator that the horse is going back to parasympathetic state because we're reactivating the salivary gland. So the parasympathetic reactivation of the salivary gland, when your horse is stressed, the lips are clamped shut,
Uh-huh.
right? They're tight as can be,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But when they start to lick and chew, it's an indicator that their nervous system is changing.
Uh-huh.
So if we don't wait on that, and their lips are still tight, they're still sympathetically aroused. And now when we ask for more beyond that, we're doing what we call trigger stacking. We're stacking the stress.
Right.
We haven't let the pressure off, and we're stacking the stress.
Now that's really interesting what you said there, Steve, because it's made me think about. I know there's a lot of people, and there may be valid reasons why people have to put, for example, a tight noseband on their horse, like a drop noseband, or a grackle, or a flash, or the keratin, or something like that. Now, personally, I don't ride with any nosebands, but that's my choice. Some people don't ride with bridles, and good for you, fantastic choice. Do you think, or what are your thoughts, that possibly by keeping the horse or not allowing the horse the ability to lick and chew and move their jaw is in fact detrimental to them being able to learn or to de-stress? What's your thoughts on that?
Horses can de-stress. They can down-regulate.
Yeah.
We can just get in the way of that. Now, you can make a horse do just about anything.
Yeah, yeah,
But just because you make them do something
yeah,
doesn't mean that they've assimilated it, that they're comfortable.
yep, yeah.
And honestly, the less we get in the horse's way,
Yeah,
the better they are, the more comfortable
yeah,
they are. Now, you can ride with a spade bit,
yeah,
but you really ought to have the softest hands in the world
yeah.
to be able to use something like that
Sorry for those.
and know what you're doing.
Yeah,
Go
for
ahead.
those, sorry for those listeners who don't know what a spade bit is, it's a type of Western curb bit, and it's if you looked at it, it does look quite horrific. It is. It works on a lot of pressure points. However, it's as a refinement tool, so you would liken it to the double bridle in Grand Prix dressage. So a rider riding, or a rider who is riding or should be riding at that level, has hands that should be able to create that finesse and light feel and light touch. So it's a high school bit, but for Western riding, or rather than for European. But unfortunately, in this country, Steve, I don't know, a lot of people think that all Western horses have to go in a curb bit.
No, that's absolutely wrong. In fact, I have a friend, Ty Murray, who was a 9-time world champion in rodeo, riding bucking broncos and riding bucking steers. And he's gone to just riding with a neck rope. So there's nothing on that horse's head. Now he'll ride out and move cattle and go to brandings, and there's nothing that he does with his horse that's any different than what he did with a bit in his mouth.
That's interesting. That is really
and there are a number of cowboys who actually have a lot of what we call cognitive dissonance, where you have this previously held belief and your identity is tied to this belief, and everybody around you sort of holds to this particular belief.
So they reinforce it.
But then if science or enlightenment shows, you know what, there is actually a better way of doing this, if you're so tied to the old idea, it causes such discomfort, you're either going to say, okay, I'm going to be open to new information, or you're going to slam the door shut and you're going to say, this is BS, this is nonsense. And
so you don't, it's not even that you walk away from it and just ignore it, you actually openly start to attack it because it threatens your original personal belief structure. Is that
right?
That's interesting,
And you know, for some people it's disturbing to see somebody do so much with a horse without all of the restraints and without all the apparatus on there. They don't want to see it because it actually...
Does you think it makes them feel inadequate in some way?
In some ways, I think it shames some people in thinking, I've always done this and I must have been causing my horse pain. The two biggest stressors to horses are isolation, they're a herd animal, and restraint. And if you think of the most times that you've seen horses come apart and act what we call, you know, you label acting badly, bucking, bolting, etc. Oftentimes, restraint has been involved. It just turned the heat up.
And they just...
Restraint can be your legs clamped on like a clothespin. Restraint can be too heavy on the mouth. And that horse doesn't feel like it can get away. You know, oftentimes where your horse is frightened, you don't have to yank them up. You don't have to one rein stop them where you pull their head around like in the cowboy movies and they fall over. You can actually just ride a big circle. And let your horse release that tension. But if you try to restrain a horse, think about it. If that horse is interpreting whatever threat as a predatory threat, a lion jumping on them, restraining them where they can't move is the worst thing you could possibly do.
Absolutely. If you think about that, I mean, it's like you've been on safari and somebody holding your arms and legs together while the lion's charging at you. You're not going to just stand there and passively be eaten. You'd be punching the person in the face behind you to get away.
Exactly, and then people say, "Look at that bad guy. He's punching."
Exactly. They don't look at the whole. They don't see the whole picture.
I think we need to ride responsibly. What I mean by that is we have to accept some of the responsibility for our horse's behavior. Horses respond a certain way because of something. Because of something in their past, or because of something we're doing. Oftentimes it's we're not clear in our message.
So the horse is basically making a decision based on their pre-existing memories or experiences, which may or may not be positive. Is that correct? Am I picking that up right? Okay.
I think about this in terms of signal to noise ratio. So oftentimes a lot of things are going on in the environment, or we're sloppy in our signals to our horse, that creates a lot of noise, and they can't find the signal that we're really asking for. Our job basically is to reduce the noise. No, you're not going to be eaten. Yes, you are safe. Let me be very clear on my signal. If I'm not, let me think of a different way to do that.
Yep. Carry on, sorry. Sorry, we've got ghosts, don't worry about it. Carry on, Steve, sorry about that, yeah.
I think I got off track here.
So you need to communicate in that key situation that by maybe doing something different but not restraining the horse, allowing the horse the freedom to, because as you said, I think you said earlier, they're motor sensory animals, so they have to be moving. Is that correct? Have I picked that up right?
Yeah, oftentimes what we're doing is we're restraining a horse when it needs to move its feet to feel comfortable. Watch them in a pasture. If something scares them in the pasture, they'll run, I don't know, 30, 50 yards.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they'll stop and slow down and turn around to see if it's really a threat. And if it's not, they'll go back to doing whatever they did.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you held them there and didn't allow them to get that, they couldn't reset their nervous system. And I think if your listeners took two things away from our talk that would improve their horsemanship quite a lot, is to always, when you're not getting what you want from the horse, to just ask two questions. One, is something frightening my horse?
Yeah.
Is there a reason that my horse doesn't feel safe in this situation? And secondly, am I being clear in what I'm asking? Am I confusing my horse? Because if you confuse them, they're going to go to
a level. They'll just go as far as they have to do to survive. Is that right?
Exactly.
Because they're just trying to survive.
Right.
And too often we're interpreting that as them being evasive, being bad, being naughty, not want to do it, just annoying me, and they don't sit in the stable overnight and plot and plan what they're going to do to you the next day.
But we act as if they do.
Yeah.
Even though we know that's ridiculous, we act as if that horse is going to go back into the pasture and then talk to all his pasture mates and say, we really pulled one over on her today. You know, she tried to get this and I said, no way. No.
Brilliant. Oh, Steve, I can't thank you enough for these really, really good insights. And guys, I really hope that you've learned a little bit from what we've done today. This podcast is going out after Steve's doing his fabulous 3-day lecture or brain seminar, brain clinic. However, we will be able to be making available pay-per-view sections of the Brainview Clinic from 2022. That will be available shortly. And with luck, if we're nice to Steve and keep this good weather so that he feels at home. As I said, it's quite funny. Steve was quite shocked that he came to Scotland and nearly got heat stroke. Well, there you go. You know, that's something new. Then hopefully we'll have him back next year. And I can't thank you enough, Steve. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm delighted to be able to talk to the listeners, and I really have an affection for Scotland, so I'm glad to be here.
Fabulous. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, guys, please, if you're interested in this podcast, enjoyed what you've heard, then please remember to subscribe to the channel, click on that little bell icon, and keep tuned in for all the other really informative video clips and more podcasts to come. Thank you very much again. Thank you, Steve. Woo!